and pesticides within our food supply. Production agriculture practices and technologies such as the use of GMOs, which is not any more or less risky than conventional crop production, has allowed American farmers to produce more food on less acres in environmentally sound ways. Find out more online at pathtotheplate.tamu.edu. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make lives better.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KCCC LP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining the Cindy Cochran Show. It's on Tuesday, so it's me. Better pick up my hands quickly and sign. Yes, we're going to be signing today, and it's so funny because I spent so much time trying to find. Wow, it is. Interpreters are very, very, very special people, and the companies and the schools just protect them. They like, who are you, and what makes you think I can get my interpreter to come over to your program? So it was so much trouble, and then all of a sudden it was like an angel came floating out through all the information and all the calling and all that. And her name is Sherri Swan, maybe you'll know her as, or Frost. So, but she's well known among the deaf people, and she is a CODA. A CODA, it's so mysterious, but it just means a child of a deaf adults. And so we're going to be talking to her quickly, but I first have to thank the sponsor of this program is Wootton, TTON, Financial Group, and they're our sponsor, and we love them so much for doing that. And they've believed in us, and they're very excited about us having a program like this. And tomorrow, Chris Wootton will be here, and he's going to talk about, the fear everyone has about the banks, and he doesn't want that to happen, and he's going to explain how we can, calm the fears, and it will be fine, okay? And I can't wait. I've got some questions for him that I don't understand, and I think, some of these people are really, really, and how they've been managing the banks and all, and we think they're so smart, and we go and give them all of our money, and you kind of look back and go, maybe our grandparents used the mattress, and that was better. I don't know. We'll see tomorrow. So be sure and join us, and it's going to be wonderful. What I like about YouTube, and we're live on YouTube, is that it's captioned. It's captioned, and so if you can't understand anything that I'm saying or signing, it's captioned, so it'll be fine. Okay, so anyway, now, drum roll. Now we want to introduce Sherri, Frost or Swan.
Same. I don't know. Frost. I'm Swan actually right now.
Okay.
So.
Okay. She's just a newlywed, and so it's so cute. Not even a full year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Almost a whole full year.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you're still real sweet to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And do you make him coffee in the morning?
Always.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
You make it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And So, do you stand at the door as he leaves for work? And
Oh, yes, and
give him a kiss.
bye-bye.
Oh, I love it. What I really, really, really want to know, and you'll go like, "Uh-oh, did we talk about this?" I just want to know the difference between ASL and signed English. Is there an easy way to explain it, or is it too complicated?
No, I mean, people ask me all the time what the difference is. And really, honestly, when I was growing up with it, I didn't even know the difference, that there was a difference until I went to college. So the difference between signed English and ASL is ASL is, I call it like a shorthand version of English, versus, signing exactly, the English, grammatical
And
order,
endings
if you
and all,
will.
yeah.
Yeah, so the ASL, like I'll give you an example. Like in English, you would say, "How are you doing?" or whatever. And then in ASL, you just say, "How you?"
Ah, okay.
So
Okay.
those are the two differences. So I call it like a shorthand version of the English language is how I would, briefly describe it.
Well, it's funny because when I first heard about it, it was in the early 70s, that they, at that time, I don't know if you remember how many different ways they were trying to do sign language, pointing to the mouth, and it was like they wanted people to lip read more than the signs. So they were doing the things like pointing the mouth and doing real large "hello, how are you?" And it was like the deaf were trying to find their own language, and they didn't want it to have to be English or anything else. It was just, they wanted something that they could get through quickly. And they thought the English takes so long to do anything. And because I remember doing the first time I signed ing, and they went, and this person grabbed my hand. "Don't do that. That's so silly. I know ing's coming after the word you signed, and because I know English, and so don't do that. It's an insult to me." And so I went, okay. Many times I've had to wash my hands after interpreting because I said something wrong. And I know that Richard will probably agree with that, and because he's always fact checking me on the computer when I say something, and I'll say it, and then he goes, "No, that's not right," or "It's right." And so he's always watching out for the audience. He doesn't want them to get the wrong information. So anyway, but now how old is someone that would use ASL, or how young is someone that uses ASL, and how old is it just the signed English? Is it the older deaf people that use the signed English?
I'm not a linguist per se, so I couldn't give you the exact, the facts of that question. But I think it really depends on the person. Like if, it depends on the family, like in my own situation where my parents were, when they learned sign language from Texas School for the Deaf.
So that was,
And that's when they learned the sign language because their own parents were hearing.
oh,
And they did lip read. And so, but even they say, I learned in school that the best lip reader in the world is, I think it's like 75% accurate in
Right,
lip reading.
right.
A skilled, lip reader. So my parents, it wasn't very successful. They missed a lot of information. So when family would talk to them, they would just have to, kind of guess at what they were saying and kind of figure out. And then they'd point and, so ASL, they learned later, But nowadays it's different. You know, they're teaching those babies right out of the womb. It was
Right.
my first language with my parents. That's what they taught me. That's
The
all
ASL
I knew.
was
ASL.
and to me, watching someone sign an ASL is it's interesting, but it's like difficult to read the book because you're used to reading, the sentences in a order that is, the subject comes first or the whatever, or subject is last or whatever. And so it sounded like to me like in the movies when the Indians would talk to the white people, and they would use a spoken English and I thought, well, no, that makes sense. And the conversations that you have with someone that's deaf they're always shaking their head like, go ahead. I know what you're saying. I know what you're going to say, and so don't use all that mess. And I thought, that's great. I need to learn that, but I just felt like it was overwhelming to me, like to try and think I could do that. But this interpreter said one time, she said, you probably do ASL a lot in your signing, and you don't even know it, especially when you forget what the sign is, so you kind of act it out, and that's really what the deaf probably enjoy that better.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
Because they
for
get.
sure.
I know they deaf people say it's so boring sometimes to watch you because there's no
Inflection in your face.
Yes, in your
Yeah.
face. That's what the
Well,
expression
and
is
really,
everything.
they say that, like, and I don't know the percentages, so don't quote me on this, but your body language and facial expressions are the majority of what someone's saying. So, and then the other, 25% versus 75%. 25% is what you say, the other 75%, whatever the percentages are, it's greater for your facial expressions than your body language. That speaks volumes
Right.
than just saying anything. So,
Right. Well, when you meet someone, and they start talking to you, what do you watch? I mean, I know you're kind of trained to watch, someone's hands and their mouth and their expression, but what do you watch another hearing person?
their
when they
face.
talk, their face, and so
Their eyes, their mouth. I mean, I'm looking here. I'm all right here in the face. Because your face, if you had your linguist, an ASL that would come in here, he would say, your face has so many meanings. Like this.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, just so many things on your face can say something without you even signing anything.
I loved how honest the deaf were when they saw me one time, and they came and said, Cindy, you're getting really, and I wanted to know what does that mean? And the girl said, don't ask, and I went, well, what is that? Is that? They said it's fat. That means you're fat. So I went, okay, great. And
Okay.
thank you for the
Yeah.
observations.
I didn't ask you, but thanks.
That's right.
Okay.
And they would tell you exactly what they were thinking, because they had not seemed like learned. These were young people. They had not learned how to disguise.
Well,
was a sign
I think
like-
it's more like they're just visual, and they didn't have the proper etiquette
Right.
to what you say in the
Yeah.
hearing world versus deaf world. It's just the proper etiquette, if you will, on what you shouldn't say, because that happens with me all the time. But that's why they tell you when you go to school to learn ASL, you got to have thick skin,
Yes.
because they
yes.
are deaf blunt.
Yeah.
They'll tell you straight up. If you don't want the truth, then don't ask. They will tell you straight up.
And I learned to love that about
Yes.
them, because
Yeah.
then I knew if I had something in my teeth, or they would always
Absolutely.
tell you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to know your story, and being a CODA, And when did you feel like you knew this was different than my friends? How old were you? How'd that happen?
I would say, just a little disclaimer, I have a twin brother, so there's two of us.
They're both hearing.
We're both hearing. Mm-hmm. So now I can't speak for him, but for me, I noticed it more like in middle school. And in middle school, the reason why is because, when you're in middle school, you want your friends to come over and all that. And I would say, "You want to come meet my parents?" And they'd go, "No, that's okay." And I was like, well, "Why? They don't bite." And they're like, "It's okay." And I was like, And that's when I started to go, is my family different? Like, why? Why won't they meet? So I was trying to figure it out. So things along the way would happen, where some of them would want to know sign language and I'd teach them, and then they'd go, and now looking back, I think it was more like when you go into a foreign country like Mexico and a little bit of Spanish, right? And you're like, ¿cuántos años? Or whatever, no habla, whatever Spanish word or words that
phrases.
You say, and then they start going, blah, 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 and you're going, huh? So I think that's probably the same for sign language, because if you start to sign, then they assume you know sign language, and they start going, blah, 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 and then you're like, huh? So I would say probably in middle school.
In middle school.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's old, really.
I mean, like 7th, 8th grade,
right.
around.
But I think it's interesting, and that would have been back, in a time where you feel like the deaf world wasn't as, publicized, or people see or on TV a lot. So I think that it's interesting that TV and the movies had a lot to do with showing the deaf world, but it still was difficult, because I think that a lot of times, you see someone on the street, or the way that they sounded different than we did. So, you didn't know if they were mad or what, because even with that, the inflection was harsh. A lot of times whenever you would listen to someone speak.
And I have a story about that I can share with you. That's a good example, because when I was younger, back in the day when you could play outside and didn't have to worry, right?
Right.
About anyone like nabbing you or whatever. If my mom went out to yell our name when we were playing, I mean, she would just go, yeah, and yell, and it sounded different.
Yes.
That's all I needed.
Yeah.
I was home, and I would get home, and I'd go, shh, don't say my name. No, I'm embarrassed. People think you MR. No. And she's like, okay. But she didn't know, because she can't hear the inflection in her voice. No. But I was all like, that's all I needed. I was like, no, don't talk, please, because kids are mean.
Sure.
I wanted to fit in. I felt different anyway. So I didn't need anything added. I don't need anybody to hear you talk, because then they're really going to go, what's wrong with your parents?
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's really interesting, in how the kids, reacted to it. I think that you have a lot of courage, like bringing them over to your house and then letting them see that you're just normal. There's nothing really different except that. And so, once you understand that, but I think kids have to be a lot older or more mature, where they don't say some really stupid things. And looking back on it, though, do you feel bad? Do you feel guilty because you felt that way about your parents?
No, I don't think I felt guilty. I think I kind of felt like I needed to find out who I was. Like, okay, I'm near native deaf, but I'm a hearing person. And then, okay, who am I?
Right.
I'm trying to figure out who I was. So just trying to find my identity, not even who my parents, what they're struggling with their whole life. So I don't feel guilty about it. I think it's made me who I am.
Right.
So I'm grateful for the experience, all the challenges that I endured throughout my life, made me who I am. So, but there were times when I was wondering, like, what's it like to be deaf? I mean, I would do as much as, like, one day I went to my mom and I was like, okay, today you're hearing, not deaf, okay? I said, put your hands down. She put her hands down and I was like, okay, now you read my lips, okay? We're not going to sign. She's like, okay. So I was like, the sky is blue. And she'd go, something about you? And I was like, no, watch. And I would try to get her to read I would say different sentences and she just couldn't get it. And I was like, okay, you're deaf. You're deaf. You're not hearing anymore. You're deaf now. So, I mean, I was trying to figure out. And then I went to a swimming pool and I was like, what's it like to be deaf? And so I went into a swimming pool and I was like, maybe if I go underwater, hearing, deaf. Hearing, deaf. I was trying to figure out what it feels like to be deaf. And then I'd go to the TV and I'd turn the volume down, and try to read his lips. And I'd go,
yeah.
what? Like
Right.
on the news, and they talk blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And I'd go, I don't even know what they're saying. So I was just trying to figure it out. And so all these experiences that I had, really made me feel like kind of unique in a different way. Not embarrassed.
Well-
When I was young, I was a little embarrassed
Right.
because of that.
'Cause it was
But
different.
then I learned to accept it. Once I went through these things, I was like, okay, people are cool with it. They want to know the language. They want to know sign language. Okay, you want to know? Okay, A, B, C. I teach them, and so.
Well, I think that's almost, well, I don't know if every interpreter, when I started interpreting, it was or learning sign language. I know I wanted to do it real fast so I could look like an interpreter.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just like gibberish, like a baby does. But I went over at Yvonne, Yvonne and Larry, yeah, their house every day, and would watch them, and they would teach me. And they said, because they saw me signing at church, but they said, all you've learned is the church signs, and you know those, but you need to know the street language. And I went, okay. So I went over there, and they started teaching me. I meant, you have a sign for that? No. And I said, yes. And I said, everything. And you can't hide it or whisper it. I've got to sign this to you. And this is what, if you go into the court and there's a rape case, you have to know about sex. And I said, well, I know about sex. No, I said, you have to know the signs for it. And I went, there's a sign for everything? And they went, yes. And they started teaching me about that. But they said, it's funny, we have to be taught so many things that you just take for granted. And it's just, you'd never even think about it. But we have to be taught things like, well, it's going to be, the body produces sounds that we understand and we know, but someone who is deaf doesn't hear the sound that the body makes. So they they don't think about someone being embarrassed by that. But you had a teaching experience with your mother, and it's funny that no one had told her before then about how'd that go. I'm gonna leave the rest to you.
Oh my. Well, so
it's an important sign.
There was a moment. There was actually a couple. I didn't tell you the other story, but there was one story where my mom was somewhere in my house and she passed gas.
Okay.
And I was like,
can you show that one more time? Okay. All right.
I mean, if it's a or whatever. At that moment, I was like, but I was like, you fart? And she was like, how'd you know? I'm like, because I can hear. And she's like, oh, like she didn't know there was a noise with that. So just a little, deaf culture. You weren't taught that.
Well, I know. Is it like snoring? Like, do they not?
Well, it's funny because if
They're
I
not
go,
hearing
if
each
I
other.
do, medical interpreting, and it's interesting because doctors will ask, because they want to know if they have sleep apnea or not, right? So they're like, well, do you snore? And they're like, and I'm thinking, well, they can't hear. How are they going to know?
Doctor.
And then they're like, I don't know. They'll say, I don't know. I can't hear. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay. Anyway, and they'll go on to the next question. So they try to, rule it out. But it's funny that when they ask that question, I'm thinking, they're going to say the answer there. But sometimes the
really
kids
funny.
will tell, you're loud. Shh. That's maybe one way of knowing if they're snoring or not. But
Yeah, you never even think about something like that, but we had it was a different sign for that same
Yeah, you
bodily
sounded different
function.
than me.
Yeah, I think mine was more
you were showing the
it. Well, see, you know what this meant? Just this meant, and so they would go like this, and then the
Aroma.
like the aroma would. And it was always so funny, and that's what my husband always remembered, those
Isn't that
signs.
funny?
He thought those were
So funny.
because he said it's so funny because they show a picture for everything,
Well, it's a
that they
visual
do.
gestural language.
Right.
So
And I mean, and that's like the company that you work for.
yes.
Sherri works as a staff interpreter for visual language. So
Professionals.
professional. And is it, are you finding interpreters and you place the interpreters, or is,
I don't. I'm a staff interpreter. We have staff who their responsibility is, recruiting, interpreters and placing them for jobs and stuff. They just tell me where to go, and I go.
okay, so you, because you just came from a job in Kingwood and found your way here. I would just
Yes.
appreciate so much that
Yes,
you would
sure.
do something like that. But you interpret for medical, for
Mental health,
Yeah, okay.
community. I do everything. Probably not legal. That's not my.
no, you do it legally.
Well, I mean, I don't do legal and I don't go to courts.
Right, oh, you-
That's not my. I mean, I do some legal per se, but not typically. I'm not
Yeah.
certified as a legal interpreter.
Now, the certifications are interesting. I think I got one of the first ones that I think this was like in the early 70s, and they had started having interpreters certified. And so I went to it, and I think I got some special, forgiveness for things because I was interpreting the news, and they wanted to keep me in a place of informing or awareness and that kind of thing because I know I was lousy. And I think that the reverse interpreting was just, I was barely, interpreting for myself, but to figure out what they were saying without them going so slow. And of course, that wasn't part of the test. And so they let me slide on that. But I think in the community college, they just started Houston Community College, and I went and talked to them about putting sign language in there, and they said, yeah, but who would take that? And I said, are you qualified? And I went, no, I can't. I can't. I can teach some. I can teach sign language, but if it was someone that needed reverse interpreting or anything like that, I couldn't do that. And so, a girl had all the certifications you could possibly need, but she said, "But since you got this started in the college, I want you to come teach the first class." And I was so honored, and I said, "Okay." And so and so it was under her that I got to teach there for just a little while, because I shouldn't have been there, but it was better that I was trying to do something. And so that was, when you have a position where people will listen to you because you're on TV or you're on whatever you're doing, that if you use it for that, I think that's good, and it made you feel really good. You couldn't do the activity you were supposed to do, but it was interesting. But so anyway, you don't hire the people. How many interpreters do they have? And this goes all across the nation, right?
Yeah, we staff in Texas. I mean, I think there's 4 of us on staff, but they have independent contractors.
Okay.
That they hire to work for us as well, that are all over, the United States.
That's
So I can't give you a
amazing.
count of how many, because there's so many, that we have all over. So
I'm so glad you said medical, because I think the first time we started this program, and I was talking to people, and I said, and so I did medical, and
Ruh-roh.
And after I thought about that night or something, I thought, wait, I did the wrong sign. That's naked. And so I should turn my hand over. That's medical, and this is naked. So anyway, shame on you. You know better. But it's funny, after you do teach your hands to sign, they just keep interrupting all your conversations with people.
Yeah, it's like, work with me.
Like, just sit there, don't do nothing now. It's okay. But so if you wanted to, you could go anywhere. I think anywhere in the world. And if all you knew was the sign language, and you knew English Sign Language, that you could get along with deaf people in the different parts of the world. That's what I was told one time. They said, I can go anywhere, and if a person's deaf and they do signs, it's okay, because we can come together and understand each other faster than the language. So
You're saying deaf people, or just
deaf-
anyone
no,
who
deaf-
knows sign?
deaf people that would meet
Yes.
someone else that
Yeah.
was deaf in another country.
Yeah.
They would go.
Because they're visual, number one. Number
Right.
two, deaf have that little, they can connect with people in different ways. Like when someone comes from Mexico, or when someone comes from different countries, and we have, Houston's so diverse.
Right.
We have people from all over, international, come here to Houston, and I've met many, many, many. But I noticed that some of the signs are different.
Right.
And, but I'll ask, so we signed this, what do you sign? Oh, okay. So I put that little in my file bank, because it's different, but it makes sense when they explain why. Because I always go, why that? And they're like, they explain. I'm like, oh, okay. So I think for a deaf person, when they meet another deaf, they have that connection. Like they know, because gesturing is more gesturing. They say is more universal.
Universal, yeah.
Yeah, than
Right.
ASL. So
Right. There was a convention in Houston, and they asked me to come in and, greet people and meet people. And so I'm standing there, and some deaf people came in, and I said, hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm from Texas, and where are you from? And they went, you didn't have to say you were from Texas. We knew it. And they started laughing, and I went, well,
Was
How
it the
did y'all
big
know it?
hair?
Was that, the hair? And no, they said, because you sign so slow, because y'all talk slow and you sign slow. But if you went to New York, where we're from, you would never. And that was right, because I did go to New York, and I went to a play there, and I'm going like, I can't get any of, it was so fast.
It's true.
So I went, well, good. I came back out, and I said, now if I'm from East Texas, I'd be signing faster. No, but they were just so they were so funny, and they had such a great sense of humor. A lot of times you think, how can they laugh, or what would make them laugh, and what would be funny to them that we could explain. How you explain that? I remember when I first started interpreting, like a horse of different colors. Like, what in the world would that mean to a deaf person? Like, why, unless you knew all those little stupid phrases that we use.
Right.
And it's difficult to explain things. Yvonne came up to me. I was over her house learning sign language, and she said, "Okay, can you help me? Can you describe Susie's voice?" I said, "That's her daughter," and I said, "Well, I'd never been asked that before." I said, "It's very light. It's so sweet, and it's just." She says, "I knew that. I thought that was right. Yeah," I said, "That's what I thought." And so I was right, and I went, "Yes." And I went, because I had no idea
how you explain sound
how you
to someone.
explain sound to someone. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And many times, like when you bring them to, we brought a group of deaf people to an orchestra, they were going to have. And so we were sitting there waiting for, it to begin, and they're tuning up and all that. And people were looking at that. Are they playing now? I said, no, it's just tuning up. So I went up and I asked them, I said, would y'all mind while y'all are practicing, rehearsing, if they come up and just feel the vibrations of the thing? And some of them started crying, like, oh, they were just so upset because they felt so bad. They thought they were going to be doing this great thing, playing in front of these deaf people, and they realized they're deaf people, and what would they get out of it? And so it was so sweet, but they got so upset, and so I'm like, no, I feel so bad. And I thought that music was interesting. It was so interesting to me because I love music, and so one night at a party, the record was playing, and I said, "Do you want to know what they're saying?" And they said, like, "Oh yeah, but we can feel like it's fast and whatever." And I said, "No, but I want to know what they're saying." And so I said, "Well, let me sign it." And so I started signing it, and they went, "You should do that more to deaf people because you're moving, and so we know what the movement is, but and then the words, and that was cool." And they said, "Our favorite singer is Jim Neighbors," and I went, "What? What do you mean?" He said, "Because his mouth is so big, and when he sings, we know every word that he's saying." And I went, "Oh, I never would have thought. I never would have thought that." But if in the life of an interpreter, how would you describe, like you meet people, it's first time you've ever met them, and they're in a medical condition, and it may be embarrassing for them. They don't know you, but how do they react to that?
For me, I'm all about customer service. And I think your face can speak volumes on whether you're approachable or not approachable. I smile, and I always will introduce myself. If I've never met him before, I'll always introduce myself. I don't go, "My parents are deaf." I don't even say that. I'll just say, "My name is, Sherri, your name," and then we'll introduce each other. So I kind of break the ice at first.
Right.
Get to know each other. I kind of want to establish that connection with them first, always.
Right.
and then, and ask, where did you go to school? Because I needed a little bit of background too. Did they go to, Texas School for the Deaf? Did they, were they, or, what is their background? That helps me know what kind of interpreter, what kind of signs they may be using. So I'll ask them, did you grow up here? Oh, okay. Where did you go to school? I'll just have a conversation with them before the assignment. If we have time. Sometimes you don't have time. You go in and you're like that. But I will always introduce myself first. I think that's important.
Are you called in on emergency cases? Oh my word! So you've seen a lot. And you have to have a face. You have to have a face that says, "Oh my word!" So, well, yeah, I guess that's why you don't want to go into court, because court can be probably terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather, to me, give me a life or death situation, and I'm there.
Right.
But you go to jail or not go to jail, I don't. It doesn't. That's not my thing.
Right.
Like, I would rather life or death. That's where I would be. That's where I think my heart. That's who I am. That's where I feel like the communication is even. Not that that's not important either.
Course, yeah.
But for me, my personality, that's where I really feel like I flourish.
Well, I would think that in the medical, and especially emergency cases, or they're having to give them bad news about their condition, that you would have to be stone-faced and not show much.
I've showed emotion.
I'm
I'm human.
Okay.
I'm not a robot.
That's good.
I say, my dad's like, you cry before? I'm like, yeah. He's like, no, you shouldn't. I'm like, I'm not a robot. Like, I have feelings and I care for people,
Oh,
I mean, I'm not going to sit there and go, I mean, it's some situations are difficult, and me showing emotion is just saying, I'm sorry for your whatever it is. So, like,
right.
I feel you,
Well, because the doctors are so, I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm going to tell you everything that's, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And here's what we're looking at. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this information for you. So I think that that would be very difficult to do. Have you ever had to interpret at a birth?
Many.
Oh, how exciting.
And it's the best. That's my favorite is baby deliveries. My favorite. I have so many wonderful stories, but I don't know if I'm supposed to share. So, but I've had some just wonderful experiences.
That's so cool. I just, because I thought about that, because someone giving birth and not being able to hear the doctors or the nurses and what's going on, what's happening, and that, they have classes. Do you ever do classes like Lamaze? Do they still have Lamaze?
Yeah, they have, parenting classes for, parents who are new before they have a baby. Yeah, they have those. Actually, I have an interesting story I want to share about when you said baby deliveries. And I think that's probably why I love to do baby deliveries, because my mom, back in the day, I mean, she had twins, right?
Yes.
There was no interpreter.
Oh, no.
They didn't have, I guess they did ultrasound. I don't know what they did back then. She wasn't sure. She was having twins, like maybe, So here she is, like, and no interpreter. So they're sitting there probing. My brother came out first with his feet. So he was, going to be breached. So they had to push him back in and move him around so I could come out. And I came out like this. I was supposed to be second, but I was first. They moved us around, and I came out, and then my brother came out second. So I was like, ladies first.
So she figured out while they were moving around.
She just said she was all like, and then it's like, oh, you have one. Oh, there's one more. So we're like 7 minutes apart. So so knowing that story, I'm like, you didn't have an interpreter? Like, what's your pain level, 1 to 10? I mean, nothing. So she didn't know. And so when I'm in a room with a patient who, I'm their everything. Like, whatever everybody is saying, I'm telling her everything that's being said.
Oh,
everything.
Yes.
And making sure we're good. When she's, You know, in labor, I mean,
the
I'm
breathing.
I'm
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm counting with her. I mean, I'm in it. I'm like on the team. You know,
man.
so
And
it's
so the dad is just probably just
he's
loves
right there
you.
with it.
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
he's all in.
Oh.
Some of them might be like, you know, it depends on who the dad's, if they can stomach the,
Yes,
you know,
seeing everything.
all that stuff, or I don't, you know, but yeah, it's the best.
I just love that. I think those stories make it all worthwhile, and
the
the
best.
ones that where there's bad news.
Yep, there's good too.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're delivering the news, but you're just an instrument that, like, you're their ears for that time, and that's
Yep.
all that you are, to them, to give them all the information that they need.
Yep.
And like I shared with you when I did my first court thing, and the boy was young, he was deaf, and so the lawyers and the judge was just those were in the room, and the judge said, wait, okay, I don't want you to sign this. I just want to talk to the lawyers right now. And so I keep signing what he's saying. And she said, did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said? And I said, yes, but I'm interpreting for him everything that happens in here. And he's not to be kept from knowing what you're saying, because that's my job.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have to tell us to leave the room if you don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, okay, fine. That he can, if he can understand what I'm saying, then that's fine. And so, you just want to go up and just choke him. And there was a judge, and I went to, my son had gotten a ticket for speeding, and we're sitting there, and this one boy, his mom just pushed him up there, and he came up in front of the judge, and he said, okay, do you plead guilty or not guilty? And he pointed to his ear, and he can't hear, and he goes, you can't hear me? Well, let me talk a little louder. And everybody started laughing in the courtroom. I mean, the rage that happens in you, and you understand. And so I walked up front. I went through the little thing and walked up front. And he said, excuse me, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm an interpreter, and I can interpret for him if you like. You go back in where you were. I don't need you to come up here. And he said, just let him go. Just let him go. And they took him to the side, and the mother came over, and I said, I'm sorry, but I didn't think that was right. And she said, well, I didn't think it was right what you did. And I said, why? And she said, because I want him to see what it was like in the real world. This is what's going to happen, and you need to be able to accept it and deal with it. And you just ruined that. And I went, okay, thanks, I'm sorry. I feel so stupid. But it was terrible. And I thought I could just feel if I was that child, if I was that child's mother, and that courtroom broke out, and that I couldn't have stood that. Ooh. There is a movie out called CODA, CODA, and I know many of the deaf people already knew about this. I just found out. Sherri told me, and she said, you need to look this up. It's on YouTube. And so I've seen clips of it, but not the whole movie. And I can't wait to see the whole movie, because you have just, inspired me. Oh, and she's dying to tell me everything and ruin it.
It's so good.
They call that spoiler alert. Okay, I've got to see where we are on our time. We are about 3 minutes. We have 3 minutes left. Is there anything that you would like to say to hearing people? We have hearing people that watch, but to say, or to the deaf community here, is there anything that you?
Oh, I love my deaf community so much. I'm so with my deaf community. I don't know. Those are I guess if I gave you any advice, hearing people, Don't be afraid of deaf people. They don't bite.
No.
And you learning sign language is so valuable. Like that, even if it's just the ABCs. Because if you can do the ABCs, then you can spell, even though finger spelling, like, is a lot. I mean, you want to save your hands because you might get carpal tunnel. So, because there's signs for that. But just your basic, hi or hi. I mean, learning to communicate with deaf is so valuable. Like my dad is so funny. He'll test the new students who just get out of college. He'll test them, their finger spelling. He'll say, what's your name? And they'll say her name. And then my dad will say, what's your name? And then they'll da-da-da. And my dad will do this, my name, and he'll spell his name, but he'll say, like, his name is Billy. And he goes, Billy the kid. And then they'll go, oh, nice to meet you. And he's like, do you know my name? And they're like, no. And he's like, you need to practice your finger spelling. So he'll test them too. I mean, deaf people have, a sense of humor too. So, but don't be afraid to learn sign language is what I would advise.
That's wonderful. And you can practice it everywhere. Yep. And to finger spell everything, every word once you know it. And I can say, and learning the alphabet, you can do like in maybe 15 minutes. You can learn the alphabet and then be able to spell anything you want. Yep. So, but I know if there was a phone number underneath your name, they would be calling because they want you as an interpreter because you're so sweet and you've got a great background for it.
Thank you.
But all the interpreters I've met, are doing it for the right reason and that they just want to help. And so, but thank you for being here. Of course.
Thank you for inviting me to come.
Oh, man. And you had so far to drive. She's from Richmond. That's one of Sugar Land. Yes. And so we need to probably give you some money for gas, but
it's okay.
No, but the company knows that you're here, so it's okay.
Yep, it's all good.
And so visual language. Visual language
professionals.
Professional. They are in every place. You had to call South Carolina. You had to call South
in the North Carolina area.
In that area.
But we're all. We have an office when we're here too, but we're there too.
But she called to get permission to be on this show, and she said everybody's watching. So.
Hi.
Thank you for letting her be on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, we want to say thank you to our sponsor again, Chris Wootton. He'll be here tomorrow. The sponsor of this show will be here tomorrow. We'll talk about the banks. And thank you, first responders. We love you. We appreciate you. Wonderful. Love you.
Every week, people ask the same two questions. Are they ready to retire? Will their savings last for their lifetimes? Hi, this is Chris Wootton with Wootton Financial Group. Our firm has been in Montgomery County for decades, but the hopes and dreams of the people we serve never change. We help answer these two questions and many more that people have about their uncertain financial future. We have a simple introductory client experience that allows us to get to know the client and includes a few meetings for the client to kick the tires at no charge. We provide a concise, one-page summary that helps the client get a better handle on which questions are the right questions for them. To learn more about Wootton Financial Group's process in helping their clients to a clearer financial future and to see their contact information, visit Cindy Cochran's show page on irlonestar.com/TCCS. Wootton Financial Group is a proud sponsor of the Cindy Cochran Show. Wootton Financial Group is available by phone at 936-449-5952 or visit them on the web at www.woottonfinancial.com. That's www.woottonfinancial.com.
This program is sponsored by the Wootton Financial Group. It is not the intent of Wootton Financial Group to render or offer personalized investment advice or financial planning advice through this radio program or any related website. Wootton Financial Group's participation in this program is limited to providing general information on financial matters and should not be construed as financial recommendation or investment advice. Investment advisory services are offered through Game Plan Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the state of Texas. Insurance services are offered through Wootton Financial Group, Inc. Game Plan Advisors and Wootton Financial Group, Inc. are affiliated through common ownership, and neither firm is affiliated with The Cindy Cochran Show. No listener should assume that any information presented and or made available on this program serves as the receipt of or a substitute for personalized individual advice from Game Plan Advisors